Alright guys, I'm going to cover a couple of things today. I'll do them as separate videos because they're completely different things. The first thing is about careers. The 40-year career is pretty much dead in the water these days. It's, it's funny when you look at it because it's not gone the way corporations would have liked. A good example is, well, people like myself, there's a lot of them that basically quit the industry during COVID. Prior to that, there was a big company in the UK called Carillion. A lot of people quit the industry when that went bust because it's a horrible industry. But the other side of this being is a lot of these things that are that create the issue are down to self-worth. There's a big push on graduates, for example, in the corporate industry. So somebody like myself, we're well, I suppose I've been middle-aged nearly now, haven't I? Must be getting there. They try to push you out and replace you with graduates. Graduates work for probably a half to a third of what you work for. They'll put the longer hours in. They're you can abuse them, not in a sexual way, but you can get them to. You can be a lot more aggressive with them because they'll put up with it because there's a hope or belief that they'll end up in a senior role. You know, in a short period of time, they streamline them just straight up the business food chain because they become your I would say yes men previously, but it's yes people these days because we have more women being forced into the industry, along with a lot more diversity. Got no problems with diversity. I'm a strong believer in equality of output though, which puts me in the wrong category because a lot of people that end up in these roles aren't fit for purpose and never will be. But they tick in the box. But the problem is, you start to see it and you start to think it ain't worth the hassle. The funny thing is, the graduates and others have also cottoned on to this because they're a different mentality to previous generations. So what you're finding is they won't do the extra hours. They won't take the level of commitment. They're not interested in being there for 40 years. In fact, they're probably seeing the shift because let's face it, when I come into the industry, well, even now I could do it till I retire, but I don't want to. But there is a shift in trying to push people like myself out to put cheaper labour in because it increases profits, but at the same time they don't seem to understand knowledge, experience and other bits. In this industry you need it. Bizarrely, we know how buildings work, and having somebody in their 20s that have done a degree around business management will not understand heating, ventilation, cooling, regulations and legislation relating to disconnecting water systems from the mains, you name it. It's stuff you gather over time, and I've evolved as the industry's evolved. But I'm finding a lot of people just ain't interested. And the companies are getting worse as well. Because you've got this influx of people that would normally not be in the industry. In the sense, I come in from a engineering business. It's flooded with like graduates, soft services. What soft services, people look after cleaners and whatever. They suddenly move across and suddenly become, we're managers, so we can manage engineering with no understanding of engineering, no understanding of legislation, and assuming other people will pick up the bits that somebody like myself that's technical would pick up normally, in the sense of in that same management role, I know what I need to be aware of. They assume they can get it next tier down will do it, and the next tier down will pick up that tier, and what you actually having happen is people lower down, become demotivated, lose interest, and leave. And it's not new. I think the COVID has made it worse, because people woke up to two things: one, how crap their job is because they had a lot of time off, and two, started an internet business or something else that pays as much. And that's just in my industry. But then we take the bigger picture. I was thinking about that this week. I'm actually earning less than I was earning in the 90s, because my taxes have gone up. So people are trying to avoid getting promoted as well, because let's face it, if you go, oh, you'll get this extra money and all these extra hours you have to work and all this, and you go, right, that's how much you're saying I get paid, because that's how much it is before tax, but after tax is down here. So you start going, it's not worth it. I don't want promoted. And I had this conversation years ago about somebody that was due for a pay rise, and asked, did you discuss it before he has his pay rise, because he might not want it, because he was under the £50,000 threshold, which means you're entitled to things like I think it's child allowance and some other benefits and stuff. But once you hit 50,000, you're not entitled to it. You're actually worse off. Now you think, oh well, you're earning over 50,000, you shouldn't be entitled to blah 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 blah, which is the bit I normally hear. I contribute a lot more than everybody else, and the guy that I was working with, he worked alongside me, contributes a lot more. He had 3 children, but the fact is you're about to take that money off him by giving him a small pay rise, which would actually probably see them worse off by about £3,000 a year. When you start factoring all these, a lot of the time it's just not worth seeing these jobs as a career, and that's what's happening. There's a big shift. People want to do more. People understand what the value of family life is. That's why you're seeing a lot of a shift to remote working. We need you, but we've realised that the way we've been working for years to suit ourselves no longer works, because nobody wants to work here anymore. So can we have flexible working? There's an entire shift. It's the same as in the UK. They had a lot of people retire during the COVID period and towards the end, because people like myself aren't easy to replace. And it's not me being, I think I'm fantastic. It's not. The reality is, very few people do what I do anyway. But to actually understand it inside out, and the complexities of, if there's a problem, I can find out what's wrong with a building, whether it's how the air is moving, why one half's hotter than the other, why the electric bill's too high, the water rate's too low. It doesn't matter what it is. It's that 32 years of knowledge that makes that possible. And most people are tired of it. You're getting a lot of useless managers. The language out of a lot of people's crap. The woke stuff is being rammed down people's throat on a daily basis. And you're going, this has nothing to do with work. This is politics. This has nothing to do with what I'm doing. You're forcing this down in some weird feminist path. And that's why a lot of people, quite simply, are moving away. They're finding other stuff to do. Hence, my whiteboard started. I haven't had much to do on it this week, because there's a few disasters at work I'm sorting out, which not mine, but just helping get them fixed. But people are waking up to the fact that the 9 to 5 is not the be all and end all. corporations around 2007, 2008 made it very aware that they'll hire and fire when it suits. Jobs for life are gone. You've got to watch your back all the time. And I've heard it for the last so many companies, how they want to make you feel that your job's unsafe. At which point, I might as well say the job's not worth it. Because if you're going to keep somebody worried about their work, what's the point of being here? That's the thing. I mean, I don't worry about it. It's just the fact is you're thinking, no, I'm not going to be manipulated into that. I know what I'm worth. And, if I go, fine, it's going to cost you a lot of money. Not because of lawsuits, but by the fact that what I actually do, in the sense of the business doesn't function properly when you take people like me out the loop. And very hard to get somebody that can cover it to just drop into the same space. But the whole, everybody's replaceable, all that sort of, fine. That's your business model. That's not a good one. And that's where a lot of companies have gone. They've either proven it by getting rid of people, or they insinuate it. But one thing they're not doing is actually encouraging people to stay. I mean, you look at it from a bigger picture. What do companies do to encourage you to stay these days? I'll let you answer in the comments, because it's a bit like when you have things like away days and things like that. There's a whole piece on the fact it's corporate manipulation. It's about maximising what the company can get out of you, maximising control, getting you to come in past your work hours or whatever. It's not about being friendly. Having a Saturday basketball team for the company, I'd say is a bit different to having some of these corporate emphasis meetings, because that's what they become, the meetings. For me, much rather spend time doing sports and stuff with the same people I work with no engagement about work. But yeah, what does the company do that's to your benefit? Because I think they've eroded a lot of the good stuff. And the problem is, if you're eroding one company, you're eroding them all, because that one's the one that becomes bigger. It's why Fiat's one of the biggest car companies in the world, if not the biggest. They make some of the crappiest cars, but they can do the quantity, which means everything drives down, not up. Look at me sound like a socialist. But the reality is that you've got to have balance. If you haven't got balance, you've got nothing. And I don't see that changing. My best advice for somebody that's like me is train, diversify, set up your own pension setup. So for example, if you're 20 years younger than me, I mean, I've got enough time to build another pension from scratch if we need to. But if you're younger, start doing this stuff early. Start developing your own business stuff early. Start finding other revenue streams. Doesn't matter what it is, because even small amounts, whether it's the YouTube videos. Like I said, I don't take any of the money off the YouTube. I send that to the Philippines. That's what pays the electric and water and stuff. But that is probably the equivalent of a week's state pension in the UK every single month. And you think people work into their 60s for that? Doesn't take much to think if you have 4 small revenue streams, you could jack in work if you wanted to. Because the bizarre thing is, once you disconnect, it's quite easy. It's very easy. The hard bit is a bit like I'm back in at the moment, rat race, going out buying new shirts and new clothes regularly. I'm into where I was before, and I know it's a curse. But at the same time, I've got a couple of bigger things I want to do. I've got budget and that for that, but I'm starting to rein it in a bit, because we're now in the exit period. We need to start extracting as much money as possible and diversifying the cash flow into things to actually generate more money so I can finish sooner. And the funny thing is, if you do that even over a 4-year period, which sounds a long time, but it's not, just try it, where you cut your debt, get your cash flow to at least 5,000-10,000, then put that into some sort of investment. Find something like a YouTube, a Amazon store, Spotify, something you can do, or even, washing cars on a Saturday or something. There are so many small things out there that could have a massive financial impact, that can leap you forward. Because instead of trying to pamper up to corporate world for a promotion that just ends up with more hours and financially not that much better off. In fact, you're probably giving your health up in a worse way. The better way to actually do it is do something diverse. Like for example, I spend a lot of time at the desk. So washing cars, installing electrics, doing other bits where I'm actually doing physical work is actually very good. It's like a workout. When you see me installing cables, running through roofs and stuff, I sweat like mad. But yeah, the worm has turned. The world's a much different place, and it's been encouraged. That's the bizarre thing. It has been encouraged that way. It's not to anybody's benefit, because the corporations are starting to realise they're creating weaknesses in their own business models. There's no point filling it with yes people or graduates, because they need to be led. And the leadership, if you look at LinkedIn, is a good example of bad leadership, because a lot of the posts are self-loathing and nepotism. It's not about developing the company. It's not about evolving the industry or even looking after its own staff. It's about the individual. Or it's a false post from some HR saying how great the company is. Yet Glassdoor will tell you a very different picture. And the funniest one I heard was I was at a company. That was the previous company before the one I was at the minute. And they lost a lot of staff. Well, even now, I think they're still losing people, because I know some of these people I was expecting still to be there aren't there either. And it's a big company, employ about 16,000 people. So you got the HR director come in, and they're talking about staff retention. They're looking at staff retention now, because we're going to ask them about why they're leaving, and they're leaving interviews. And I had to bite my lip, because once you're at that point, they ain't coming back. They've already made a decision to move. They've probably already found another job. They're already gone. What you should actually be doing is going, why are you leaving, before you get to that point. When somebody starts resigning, ask them why they're resigning. What is it? But 9 times out of 10, they knew what it was. It was bad management. Because everything else on the day-to-day, because you're talking from cleaners to senior management, all wanting out of businesses. I say businesses because it's not one contract, because they would go, oh, it's just a bad contract. No, that was all over the business. It's multiple contracts, which tells you it's a director level down. Whatever they've introduced is killing their own company. But anyway, I'll leave that like that. But like I said, my view on it is, well, how would I fix it? Well, the first thing is you ask somebody on a regular basis, how they doing? How's their day? Everything all right? If you've got everything you need? And it doesn't need to be so formal, because I don't mind people saying, Matt, you're a twat, at work, because I had to work late because of this. And I'll go, oh, hang on. At which point, I'll normally go, that's nothing to do with me. Who told you it was to do with me? Or they say, oh, yeah, I had to work Saturday or whatever. Like today is Saturday. It's half past 7 in the morning. I'm waiting till 8 o'clock because I have got guys in this Saturday for something that's important. So I'm phoning them and checking they've got everything they need. I'm not disappearing for the weekend because I need to make sure they're okay because they've had to come in to do something I need doing. But it's showing a level of commitment from all sides. And also, like I say, if somebody says, well, I don't want to do Saturdays, that's fine. I'm not going to manipulate somebody into doing something they don't want to do. I may ask why they don't want to do Saturdays, and they go, well, I hate the company. And I go, okay, well, that's fine, but why? Why? And then you'll get the facts slowly to understand where they're coming from. And I take a very simple approach to this. Instead of going, well, it's tough. It's everything's a management problem. If you take it from that perspective, it's always somebody's senior management. It's always my fault, and I accept that. And it's not being deflated or whatever. It's the fact is, it's going right. What's wrong? I'll fix it. Simple as that. Cars have got a rubbish. Could be as simple as that. I've had it before with changing mugs. For tea. They had a lot of mugs with broken chips and stuff, rival company names and stuff on it. And I went and ordered 80 new mugs. And then I drove around as I was doing my audits on the sites and replaced all their mugs. Didn't have to make a fuss about it. Didn't have to go, there's your mug. It's literally, I just changed all the mugs out without saying anything. And everyone's like, ooh, new mugs. All excited, all happy. Understanding your customer. At the end of the day, I see my engineering team the same as most people. They're my customer, not just people that I work with or whatever. They're my customer, because if they're happy, they perform better, and that's partly the issue. And the other thing is, I like people to enjoy where they work. If you can't do that, change firms. Plenty of jobs out there these days. Yeah. Anyway. Just want to talk about careers. I don't think they're worth the 40 years any. I'm in a company yet that's worth putting your life into anymore. The old days, yeah, because it's an easy life. I sometimes wonder about the people that clock in, clock out, and went and did the same thing for their entire lives, because those jobs are disappearing. That's rise of automation. So those jobs, I could understand people just do the same job, go to the football on the weekend, go at the pub on the Friday, go at the pub quiz on the Wednesday. They've got a routine that they're happy with, 2 weeks in Benidorm, nothing wrong with it. I would love to be able to drop into that slot where I was content like that, but I can't. It's like we've got the house finished here. My thought is, need the next one. But I do not knock people for being content, but the problem is very few people are content. Too many corporate changes, too many buyouts, too much streamlining or any other crap they come out with to try and justify the fact that they're losing money often through bad management, not the actual business itself. Yeah, the world has changed.